Hi, this is Dan Runcie, founder of Trapital, and you're listening to Your Morning Coffee, your place for weekly insights on the new music business with Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
From Complete Music Update, did Sony's Rob Stringer just hand Regulators the case to tank Universal's Downtown Dreams?
And from the LA Times, this Palm Springs venue was a hotspot for music. Then came the pandemic and a bitter legal battle.
And from our friend Chris Castle over at Music Technology Policy, why tariffs are quietly undermining the American vinyl comeback. Boy. So all this and more. We've got so many great stories to talk about. And we also have Ruby Marchand from the Recording Academy joining us to talk about new categories and what's happening at the Grammys. So I say we start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
So nice to see you, Jay, and on episode 255.
Wow.
If you could believe that. My goodness.
Time flies.
Time is flying, but it's good to see you, and we've been chatting for a good long while.
Yeah, we have.
We're starting the show now,
Yeah.
so we've got lots to talk about.
Lots of good things coming, books and documentaries, and we'll get into that in a second. But before we do, last week you and I talked about a story from Jem Oswald in Variety, and the headline was Grammy Awards unveil dates for 2026 show and nominations announcement, new categories, including Best Album Cover, which I'm pretty excited about. So this week, I spoke with Ruby Marchand from the Recording Academy. She's the Chief Awards and Global Industry Officer. I spoke to her from her car, from the streets of Manhattan, which was interesting. And we talked about the new categories and all the things that are happening at the Grammys. Let's listen in. Ruby, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today from behind the wheel in Manhattan.
From the corner of Lafayette and Great Jones. It's great to be here, Jay.
All right. Well, let's dive right in. So the Recording Academy last week revealed some key dates, deadlines, rule amendments for the 68th Annual Grammy Awards. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, once a year we have this major announcement that really launches the awards season. And as you know, we're now ready for the 68th Grammy Awards. It's hard to believe we're here. So this particular announcement updates every facet of the awards process for our community and for our members. So you're right, it's chock full of information.
Talk about the Recording Academy's progress in the last couple of years of really diversifying and enlisting new members.
Yeah, I would say that over the last 5 years especially, we have been transformed by diversity, by a great sense of intent and purpose, by new members coming in. We had an initial goal of 2,500 women members joining, and we say, we blew past it. In other words, we were able to achieve that and more. So we've actually now gained 3,000 new women. At the same time, we've completely refreshed our voting member profile. So when it comes to people of color, when it comes to new and engaged members, it is a very, very different academy than it was previously. And that is not to the detriment testament of existing members who continue to be so dedicated to our process, to the integrity of the awards process, and to the value of membership. So we've really engaged in enriching the community, at the same time celebrating and respecting the traditions that continue to uphold what the institution represents.
Yeah, and as a longtime voting member myself, I can attest to that. Talk a little bit about some of the new fields and category updates for this year.
Yeah, so we are now at 95 categories, and that's quite something. We were at 94 last year, and that's a combination of adding one new category that's quite distinct in country, and also we have consolidated a couple of categories within our packaging area and created a brand new category for Best New Album Cover, and that existed in the past. I know, I can see you celebrating. A lot of people feel that way, so we brought something back that's near and dear to people's hearts.
Oh, that's so great. Also, there's a full Grammy rule book that's available to anybody who wants it. Where can our listeners learn more, Ruby?
Yeah, there is we're very transparent. There is a public rule book that would give people every definition, every nuance, peering inside the 95 categories, which are a combination of genres and crafts, right? There's both that are included in the rule book. It's very comprehensive. If people were to go to recordingacademy.com and just type in Grammy Awards rule book, they would be able to pull it up immediately. And there's a lot of good reading material there. So we encourage people to do that, especially our members who are going to be voting in the upcoming season.
Ruby, keep up the great work. It was so great talking with you. Let's talk again.
Thank you so much, Jay. Great to be here.
Oh, that's great stuff. Great stuff.
Nice Thank you, Ruby. We appreciate it.
From the car, even. So, gotta love that. Yeah. Hey, and I wanted to mention, we talked about it briefly. I just finished a book that's been out for a couple of years. I've been meaning to read. It's been on my shelf. It's called The Birth of Loud. Leo Fender, Les Paul, and the guitar pioneering rivalry that shaped rock and roll, written by Ian S. Port. Man, it's a great book. You and I just talked about it a little bit. Highly recommended. And it kind of all takes place really here in Southern California, kind of post-war, about how the guitar business changed and the change of music and volume and needing of amplifiers, and Leo Fender and Les Paul and all these wonderful folks. It's a great book. Highly
wait. What's that title again?
The Birth of Loud. Leo Fender, Les Paul, and the guitar pioneering rivalry that shaped rock and roll. It's a great one. Yes, indeed. Also, by the way, Surefire's best calendar update released. Marilyn Laverty and the Surefire staff over there. Their calendar of key entertainment and sports events, internally dubbed the best calendar. They've gathered information on important events from the worlds of music, entertainment, sports, literature, and culture, with links to Apple Calendar, Google Calendar, and PDF versions available as well. And man, that is an awesome, and the work that goes into it is stunning, and it's a wonderful resource.
It is the best resource. Check that calendar out. They regularly update it, and you can send them your events if they're noteworthy, and any changes you may have for consideration. There's a link to this calendar in your morning coffee. Don't miss the Surefire Best Calendar. This last Friday, we dropped the Billboard Behind the Setlist podcast. It's a really good chat with Buzz Osborne from Melvins. Man, what a smart guy. We talk about not only the Melvins, but some of his superpowers. Like, he routes their tours. And if you need a great booking agent, he would be awesome. Anyway, and then just really quickly, last night, Glenn Peoples and I attended the show of Lyle Lovett and his large band at the Orpheum Theater. Holy cow. Man. I mean, what an incredible night. You've got, Russ Kunkel and Leland Sklar in the band, who are just legendary. If you don't know about the Immediate Family, check out that documentary. But they had a couple of members of the Muscle Shoals section, Steve Herman, Charles Rose. And I know you play piano, and I couldn't wait to talk to you this morning about Jim Cox, who plays piano for Lyle Lovett. Man, I've never seen anybody play like that guy. It was absolutely incredible. Check out the latest Lyle Lovett, and we're going to drop that podcast this coming week. A fantastic interview with Lyle Lovett.
Oh, I'm so sorry I missed the show because he always has the greatest bands, and he himself, of course, is a fantastic musician and raconteur. Yeah, a little jealous about that, Jay, to be honest. Interesting story from Joe Sparrow over at Music Ally. Up to 70% of AI generated streams on Deezer may be fraudulent.
Uh-oh.
So the French DSP Deezer has been open about the rates of fraudulent activity on its service in its effort to crack down on fraud. Now it's revealed that as much as 70%, that's right, 70% of the AI-generated music that's streamed on Deezer may be fraudulent activity. While AI-generated tracks make up only about 0.5% of total streams on the platform, Deezer's analysis suggests that the majority of those streams are fake.
Yeah, this is a real problem. So how big is this problem? Well, big enough to be concerning, but perhaps not quite as worrying as it sounds. Spotify's head of artist and industry partnerships, that's Brian Johnson, he recently said that there is an infinitely small consumption of fully AI-generated tracks on Spotify.
So while seeing fraudulent activity shift to AI-generated music is an issue that is taking money from real artists' pockets, it's also perhaps an inevitable part of fraud's raison d'etre, which simply endlessly takes the path of least resistance to make as much money as possible by nefarious means.
Yeah, it's super interesting. There was another story. I actually got to attend this conference, the A2IM Indie Week, and I saw a presentation from our friends over at Luminate, Haley Jones and Chris Murator. And there was a story about it that they put out. The headline was, "Independent music is enjoying strong market share, accounting for 35% of total music consumption in the U.S." So as part of the annual Indie Week in New York last week, Luminate's Haley Jones and Chris Murator joined Indie Dojo's Bill Wilson for a presentation, and I saw the presentation, and you can now get the PDF of that in the link to the story.
Right, so if you want to learn more about what Luminate shared at A2IM or better understand how to access the data yourself, click on the link in the Your Morning Coffee newsletter to download the full presentation from Indie Week. It is very well worth your time. Really interesting stuff.
Yeah, I was taking photos with my iPhone of the screen, so now I have something a lot easier to handle. Yeah. There was an interesting story from Music Ally about Epidemic Sound, and you and I had their CEO, co-founder on the show recently, a special episode. This headline was, "Epidemic Sound releases Future of the Creator Economy report." And you know I love these reports. This report explores the evolving landscape of the creator economy. And that's something Mike and I talk about a lot. It's getting bigger and bigger. We talk about companies like BandLab. Yeah. This particular piece focuses on the opportunities and the challenges faced by content creators today. And there's a link in your morning coffee to this report. We highly recommend it.
So here are our top 10 takeaways of this report. Again, the Future of the Creator Economy report. Number one, content creation boom. Approximately 85 million individuals and 110 million companies are actively creating content, indicating a robust and expanding creator economy.
Absolutely. Number two, professionalism in creativity. 61% of creators now work full-time, reflecting the transition of creativity from a side hustle to a legitimate profession.
Right. Number three is direct-to-fan monetization. 95% of creators engage fans through direct-to-fan models, emphasizing personal storytelling and building loyal audiences.
Yeah, number four, AI integration. 91% of creators are utilizing AI in their content creation processes, and they're leveraging technology for faster workflows and creative inspiration.
Yep. Number five is challenges in content creation. 96% of creators face challenges such as time constraints, licensing issues, and creative burnout, highlighting the complexities of the creator economy.
Yeah, number six, platform diversification. Creators are increasingly looking to expand across multiple platforms to manage income volatility and retain control over their content.
Number seven is the role of music. 94% of creators believe music contributes significantly to content success, with many adapting their music strategies to enhance audience engagement.
Yeah, and number eight, emotional connection. Music is seen as a vital element for storytelling, with 47% of creators noting that it improves audience engagement and brand recognition.
Number 9, emerging artists focus. Many creators prioritize working with emerging or lesser-known artists to maintain authenticity and stand out in a crowded market.
Oh, I like that one. And the last one, number 10, future of AI in creativity. Creators expect AI to significantly shape the industry in the coming years. So this report serves as a valuable resource for understanding the dynamics of the creator economy, something we talk about a lot. It really offers insights to empower creators as they navigate this professional journey. A link to the report is in your morning coffee.
It certainly is. And another great story from Elias Light over at Billboard. Spotify's bundling practices spark bipartisan call for FTC probe. Senators Marsha Blackburn and Ben Ray Lujan urged the FTC to investigate the impact of Spotify's recent actions. So in a letter to FTC Chairman Andrew Ferguson obtained by Billboard, the senators accused the streamer of converting all of its premium music subscribers into different and ultimately higher-priced bundled subscriptions without their knowledge or consent. The senators added these actions harm consumers and could deeply damage the marketplace and the music royalty system.
Yeah, they're calling this Bundlegate, and we've talked about this quite a bit. This is pretty new, though. In fact, this story by Elias Light in Billboard came out after the newsletter was sent on Friday, so it's not in the newsletter, but you can see it on Billboard. So in a statement that was sent to Billboard last year, a Spotify spokesperson said that their approach to expanding its offering and raising prices is industry standard. We notify users a month in advance of any price increases and offer easy cancellations as well as multiple plans for users to consider, end quote, as part of an effort to provide consumers incredible value and a best-in-class experience.
Right. Well, in 2024, Spotify bundled 15 hours per month of audiobook streaming with the standard premium music subscription plans. The company subsequently raised the premium subscription fee in the U.S. to $11.99 for individuals and $19.99 for families. That was on July 1st.
Yeah, so existing subscribers were allowed to opt out, of that higher price bundle for a music-only, quote-unquote, basic plan that costs $10.99. However, a Morgan Stanley survey published in January found that only about 7% of U.S. individual, Spotify premium subscribers and about 10% of family plan subscribers chose the less expensive option.
And the streamer's move to make its premium plan a bundle qualified those offerings for a lower mechanical royalty rate in the United States. This quickly drew the ire of music publishers. You may remember the NMPA filed a complaint with the FTC last year.
That's right. And at the NMPA's annual meeting earlier this month, General Counsel Danielle Aguirre said that one of the biggest challenges for the organization continues to come from Spotify's mischaracterization of its music service into bundles, which forced the conversion of over 44 million subscribers into bundled platforms that those subscribers did not request.
Right, and she said that songwriters and publishers lost $230 million as a result of the change. So bundled premium plans are apparently aimed at increasing Spotify's profits, Blackburn and Lujan wrote, while lowering royalty payments to the creative community. So I'm sure we're going to be talking about this one again and more. It's something, again, that's such an issue. So before we get going on the stories, though, Jay, what do you say we thank the sponsors? And, of course, we are so lucky to have them, and they really do a Herculean job of helping us put out the show every week.
They sure do. And we're sponsored by Disc Makers. If you're listening to this podcast, you already know Disc Makers. They make some of the highest quality CDs and DVDs in the country. They also specialize in short-run vinyl with minimum orders of just 100 vinyl records. And they're also great guys. We use them when we need discs for our clients. So Disc Makers has partnered with an exciting new startup called Spinny Media. They do warehousing and order fulfillment of physical media like CDs, vinyl, cassettes, yes, cassettes, and much more. You pay a small monthly subscription as low as $2, and they fulfill your orders. You pay no pick fees or commissions. They have their own Shopify, Amazon, eBay stores, and also fulfill your Bandcamp and website orders. Very cool. A needed service for independent labels and artists looking to sell more physical albums without having to stuff envelopes and run to the post office every day. Between disc makers and Spinney, you now have a great supply chain solution for end-to-end manufacturing, warehousing, and order fulfillment of physical media. Check out discmakers.com or spinneymedia.com. That's SPINNEY, spinneymedia.com.
Yes, indeed. We are also sponsored by the Mechanical Licensing Collective. The MLC is a nonprofit organization that's making a big difference for songwriters, music publishers, and other rights holders by transforming how they receive mechanical streaming royalties from services like Spotify and Apple Music in the U.S. Every month, the MLC collects the streaming data and royalties from those platforms, matches the money to the creator who has earned it, and then pays them or their publishers and administrative partners the royalties they are due. To date, the MLC has already distributed over $2.5 billion in total royalties and has nearly 50,000 members worldwide. If you're a songwriter, composer, or lyricist with music streaming or a publisher or administrator, you need to become a member of the MLC to ensure you're not leaving any money on the table. Best of all, membership is completely free and the MLC pays out 100% of the royalties it receives. So go over to themlc.com to learn more. Great organization.
Yeah, and we're also a special shout out to Billboard Pro. You want to know what everyone in the music business is talking about? Get in the know with Billboard Pro. Billboard's offering Your Morning Coffee readers and listeners a special 50% discount off of the price of your subscription. We highly recommend it. Click on the link in Your Morning Coffee.
Indeed, we are also sponsored by Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. It is edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Yeah, Bands in Town. We love Bands in Town. Over 90 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist services platform connecting over 650,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
Indeed, and every week I get to hang out with the man that I text frequently, sending everything from music recommendations to book recommendations to documentary recommendations, all kinds of stuff. He is Jay Gilbert. He's a music industry consultant. He's the curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups, and maybe, just maybe, the most organized person I know.
I drink a lot of coffee, and I am happy to accept those texts whenever you send them. It's always a highlight of my day. I get to do this show with my good friend Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, so cool, Warner Music, capital EMI, and Universal Music Group, where I first met him, and we bonded over bootleg recordings and unhealthy lunches.
That's right. And you had all the bootlegs, I got to say. I wish I got started. I didn't get started on that until I met you. All right, well, let's jump into the first story. This is from Complete Music Update. Did Sony's Rob Stringer just hand Regulators the case to tank Universal's Downtown Dreams?
Oh boy.
It's a long title, isn't it? Sony music boss Rob Stringer couldn't resist boasting about his company's vast indie data empire at Friday's Investor Day by revealing exactly how majors use distribution intelligence to dominate the market. He may have just handed Regulators the ammunition to kill Universal's Downtown deal. Oops.
Sony music boss Rob Stringer spent Friday boasting to investors about how his company's data dominance. He laid out, with remarkable candor, how Sony leverages the indie distribution data it controls to know exactly what catalogs are worth, which emerging artists to sign, and where the market is heading.
Right, and in doing so, he made the perfect case for why regulators should block Universal Music's acquisition of Downtown Music Holdings. He probably didn't realize he was doing that, though cynics might argue he knew exactly what he was doing. Every revelation about Sony's independent distribution network was another reason why letting Universal build a similar intelligence operation would be catastrophic for the wider independent music ecosystem.
Right. So Rob Stringer said, we have higher independent market share than any other label or distributor. And he said that it offers unique and tailored solutions to upwards of 26,000 label partners. Incredible. While AWOL currently works with 20,000 plus artists. Given those, Orchard allied labels likely represent multiple artists, we're potentially talking tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of acts mainlining their data straight into the gaping maw of Sony headquarters.
The gaping maw.
Nice.
Well, then came the kicker. So Stringer mentioned almost casually that the Orchard has minority interests in over half of its top 20 clients. Let that sink in. These aren't arm's length distribution deals. They're strategic stakes in the companies that Sony is supposedly just servicing as clients, made possible by the data and insights it has into the very heart of those businesses.
Yeah, and it doesn't take an idiot to see the obvious parallels. And given the vision of the likely outcome, if Universal gets control of Downtown and its Fuga subsidiary, today it's distribution, tomorrow it's minority stakes. Next week, it's backdoor acquisition, control, and influence.
Right. It's the music industry equivalent of boiling a frog. Indie labels sign up for distribution or artist and label services, and before they know it, Sony knows everything about their business and exactly when to turn up the heat. When the investment opportunity arrives, it's likely an offer they can't refuse.
Yeah, and that's actually the artwork for this article is a man boiling a frog. And it's such a great piece by Sam Taylor. He goes on to write that Sony knows exactly who needs a cash injection and when. And while the offer might not come with a horse's head in the bed, oh my God, there's always the implicit warning. Everyone knows what happens to labels who try to go it alone.
But of course, Sony doesn't just have visibility into hundreds of thousands of indie artists. It combines that intelligence with insights from its own massive roster and 125 years of catalog data. Indeed, Stringer points out that Sony has invested dramatically in analytics and technology, including acquisitions like FanSifter, that not only makes us smarter, he said, but generates valuable information for Sony and its partners.
Yeah, all that data powers Sony's most lucrative plays with a payoff that others can only dream of. When Sony splashed out a rumored $1 billion to gobble up Queen's catalog, including name, image, and likeness rights, or Pink Floyd's recordings, it wasn't gambling.
Right. So Stringer explained we have inside track on those earnings. We are not a fund buying into something and guessing. In other words, the company was using data from its own artists plus hundreds of thousands of indies to model exactly what those catalogs were worth. Unmatched market intelligence that spans from bedroom producers to global superstars.
Right, and then there's the cycle. Those perfectly informed catalog acquisitions and billion-dollar deals, they can generate massive returns with Sony's insights putting them, in the money from the get-go. Those return funds, acquisitions, creating even greater market consolidation. Sony's data advantage doesn't just help them spot opportunities, it lets them exact valuations and bid with precision while competitors guess.
Well, in the language of Stringer's investor audience, it's a classic platform effect with compounding returns. Information asymmetry drives superior internal rates of return, which funds further M&A, mergers and acquisitions, which deepens the data moat. And of course, the genius is that indie labels actually pay Sony for distribution services, handing over valuable market intelligence in the process. Sony then monetizes that data through precision catalog acquisitions in the ultimate double dip.
As Stringer points out, the timing couldn't be more crucial. He said that in 2020, 24% of the top 200 tracks were catalog songs. In 2024, that percentage grew to about 50%. This isn't about nostalgia or TikTok resurrections. Sony's vast data network shows them exactly how catalog performs across, every metric, which demographics stream, what and where sync opportunities emerge, and how songs travel across platforms.
So when half the charts are catalog and you've got end-to-end visibility into the ecosystem, acquisitions become significantly less risky. And that means both megabucks mainstream catalog, but also smaller niche genres. Add to this the brutal reality of modern streaming. Of Spotify's 202 million tracks, 175 million earn precisely nothing because they sit beneath the 1,000 stream annual threshold, completely demonetized.
Yeah, in a world where 87% of the music is, to all intents and purposes, commercially worthless, having visibility into hundreds of thousands of tracks from indie artists and labels gives Sony a crucial edge in predicting which tracks are dead in the water and which ones will turn catalog that keeps earning.
If Universal gets Downtown's data, they'll have that same edge, a duopolistic flywheel that leaves everyone else behind while the two biggest music companies in the world bid against each other in search of the smallest edge over the competition.
Right. Sam goes on to write that this data dominance shapes Sony's entire worldview. When Stringer argues that streaming is underpriced, he's not talking in vague terms. Quote, music should not be free or cheap bargain still, he argued, pointing out that there's been a decade of positive value for money proof of concept in mature territories.
And as for free tiers, he wants to see free tiers more closely looked at, and whether in mature markets there should be, as he said, a different structuring of how we would get revenue from the free tier, not just via advertising, but also by hopefully trying to convince the consumer in those tiers to upgrade to a subscription.
Yeah, those arguments, you have to assume, are not simply random policy positions, but conclusions from watching consumption patterns across Sony's global catalog. When you can see how every demographic uses music across every platform and every price point, you don't have to guess what the market will bear. You know.
Well, and the same advantage will be crucial as the industry navigates the challenges of AI. As Stringer reveals, Sony has already engaged with 800 plus companies on AI initiatives. And with the recent news that the majors are negotiating with music gen AI firms Suno and Udio, Sony and the other majors will look to leverage the insight their vast access to data gives them.
Wow, 800 plus.
800.
More data will be given more leverage, which gives more ability to profit from the opportunities presented by AI. If Universal gets Downtown, this won't mean positive competition, but rather a data duopoly with the two majors carving up indie intelligence between them, stifling competition and locking out true independence.
For Universal, the Downtown deal would provide what they are missing to give them the competitive edge they need for the future and to stay ahead of Sony's mass-scale indie data and a pipeline of in-the-family acquisition prospects.
Yeah, this is so interesting. Universal knows its own roster inside and out, but it can't see what's bubbling up through the indies the same way that Sony can. That blind spot, it really matters when you're getting billions on catalog deals and taking on more existential quality, when the music industry faces another round of technological disruption driven by AI.
So Stringer noted we were the earliest to adapt a major indie distribution platform into our system, and he said that with the quiet satisfaction of someone who got there first. And as he reminds investors, none of our competitors come close to the magnitude of scale Sony has in the indie sector. The implication is clear. Sony got there first, built the biggest network, and now everyone else is scrambling to catch up.
Of course, if competition authorities happen to notice, just how Sony benefits from its interests in the independent sector and how dangerous it would be for Universal to have the same or even bigger advantage, well, that wouldn't exactly hurt Sony's position, would it?
So the message to regulators couldn't be clearer. When Stringer talks about keeping, as he says, creators in our ecosystem, what he means is that we see everything, we know when you're breaking, and we'll be ready with a checkbook.
Right, and whether intentional or not, he spelled out the stark reality of Universal's play for downtown, which is that unchecked, indie artists and labels won't just be competing with the majors, they'll be auditioning for them. With every stream tracked, every trend analyzed, and every success story flagged for an acquisition offer.
Well, Stringer's presentation was meant to wow investors. Instead, he's handed regulators a gift-wrapped case against the downtown deal. Poor Lucian must have been watching through his fingers as his rival cheerfully detailed exactly why a data duopoly would be catastrophic for competition.
Yeah, and finally, if Universal ends up permanently locked out of the indie intelligence game while Sony continues its shopping spree, well, Stringer probably won't lose much sleep over that either, and Friday's Investor Day might go down as one of the music industry's greatest and most subtle acts of corporate sabotage, accidental or otherwise. That was an incredible piece, and that's not even the entire piece. We just pulled out parts that we thought were interesting. Read that whole piece. It's from Sam Taylor at Complete Music Update. Fantastic job there, Sam.
Acts of corporate sabotage, accidental or otherwise. Well, what a great way to end the story. And I'm still kind of on the fence whether it was accidental or otherwise. So really, really thought-provoking and interesting article, and something we're going to be revisiting a lot as that downtown deal gets maybe even closer inspection. The next thing is from August Brown over at the LA Times, a really interesting story. This Palm Springs venue was a hotspot for music. Then came the pandemic and a bitter legal battle. Back in the worst pandemic days of 2020, Elizabeth Garro and Melanie Tasquelis were terrified they would lose their nightclub. The co-owners of The Alibi, an independent music venue with space for up to 300 people in downtown Palm Springs, opened in late 2019, just before the COVID-19 shut down the live music scene.
Yeah, you sent me this story, and I was shocked. I remember this, during the pandemic where this came about. Garro was a former booker for the Regent, Echo, and Echoplex in LA. She also opened Stories books in Echo Park. Tasquelis was a hospitality veteran behind Los Feliz' El Chavo and Silver Lake's historic Edendale restaurant. The two said they had invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into renovating and opening this club, Alibi.
Right. So Garro recalled in an interview, it's difficult to run a small independent venue at any time. And during COVID, it was particularly hard. A lot of them didn't make it. Garro heard that Mark Geiger, then a WME music executive she had known and worked with for decades, and a former WME board member, John Fogelman, had founded Save Live, a company investing in independent venues to help them survive the pandemic.
Yeah, I remember that well. When Save Live offered to buy 51% of the Alibi and let the co-founders continue to run it, the deal felt like such a relief, Garro said. It felt like a lifeline, like, hey, we're going to make it. Instead, Garro and Tasquelis claim in a 2023 lawsuit and an interview with The Times that the partnership ruined them.
Their lawsuit, which seeks compensatory damages, alleges that Geiger and Fogelman negotiated the deal in bad faith, forcing them out of the company's operations soon after the purchase. After briefly reopening in 2022, the club permanently closed later that year. A trial is set for August.
Right. So attorneys for Save Live, which has since rebranded itself as Gate 52. They declined to comment when they were reached by email. In a cross-complaint to the suit, Geiger and Fogelman say Save Live bent over backwards to try to resolve the parties' differences and called Garro and Tasquelis' claims salacious and utterly false, allegations of misogyny and bad faith.
Right, so the suit raises questions about the future of local indie music venues like The Alibi and about Save Live's intentions. Does the firm rescue troubled venues, or capitalize on their financial vulnerability.
Right. So here are 10 key takeaways that Mike and I pulled from this article from August Brown. It's a comprehensive LA Times article, but these are our 10 takeaways. Number one is impact of the pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic significantly affected live music venues, including the Alibi, which struggled to survive due to the shutdown and financial constraints.
Right. And of course, they talked about the partnership with Save Live. Garo and Tesquelas partnered with Save Live, which sought to invest in struggling venues, believing it would provide necessary support.
Right. Number three, allegations of mismanagement. The co-owners alleged that after Save Live acquired a majority stake, they were sidelined in operations, leading to mismanagement and financial difficulties.
Right, and number four, the closure of the venue. Despite a brief reopening in 2022, the Alibi permanently closed later that year due to ongoing disputes and financial issues.
Right, and then number five, legal action. Garo and Tesquelas filed a lawsuit against Save Live, alleging bad faith negotiations and improper management practices.
Right, number six was Save Live's response. Save Live countered with allegations against Garo and Tesquelas, including claims of embezzlement and mismanagement of funds.
Number seven, cross complaints. The legal battle include cross complaints with Save Live, asserting that Garo and Tesquelas, they sought to regain control over the venue's liquor license.
Right. So number eight is, of course, the importance of small venues. The article underscores the cultural significance of small independent venues like the Alibi in fostering local music scenes and providing opportunities for artists.
Number nine is challenges for the music industry. The future of independent music venues remains uncertain due to economic pressures, competition from large corporations, and reduced tourism.
And then, of course, number 10 is the broader industry context. The Alibi's situation reflects a broader trend of corporate consolidation in the music industry, raising concerns about the viability of smaller venues. Man, what a mess. And sad, very sad.
Yeah, we'll see how this plays out. I hope it's not what it appears to be. Our final story is from our friend Chris Castle from Music Technology Policy, someone who we think very highly of, and we can't wait for his weekly writings. The headline was, "Why Tariffs Are Quietly Undermining the American Vinyl Comeback." The resurgence of vinyl records has been one of the most unexpected and encouraging trends in American manufacturing. That's why we fought for the mechanical royalty rate increase on vinyl for songwriters. Across the country, demand for physical music is rising. Independent pressing plants are expanding, and artists love vinyl releases, and legacy catalogs are being reissued. It's a textbook case of an organic industrial renewal.
Chris says, but the system is cracking, and the reason is simple. We've let trade policy punish the very people trying to build things here at home. He says you can import the finished record, but not what it takes to make one. Thanks to long-standing protections for cultural goods, it's easy to import a finished vinyl record into the United States, even during trade emergencies. He says that's by design.
Yeah, Chris goes on to say that the raw materials required to press the same record in the U.S., nickel, PVC, paperboard, and steel, they aren't protected. They're subject to tariffs that raise costs by double digits. The result? U.S. manufacturers pay a premium while foreign pressing plants face no such burden. We're taxing the inputs that build domestic industry while letting the finished imports in for free.
So he says a tariff system that backfires. He says tariffs are a tool. Like any tool, they only work if you point them at the right target. He says in this case, they're hurting the wrong side. Most of the world's supply of vinyl-grade PVC and electroplating nickel comes from countries facing long-standing U.S. trade penalties. That raises costs for American producers. Meanwhile, no domestic lacquer disc production exists, and there are no direct metal mastering machines operating in the U.S., meaning we rely entirely on foreign inputs for the first step in the vinyl mastering process. When a tariff punishes a domestic factory more than a foreign competitor, something is wrong.
Chris goes on to write, the ripple effect goes further. As raw materials become more expensive for independent U.S. plants, some larger European companies are stepping in, not just as suppliers, but as buyers. They acquire U.S. pressing operations, then ship critical materials across borders through intercompany structures that bypass standard tariffs. That's not globalization, it's vertical consolidation, and it's happening right under our noses.
Right. And Chris says cultural infrastructure is still infrastructure. This isn't just about music fans. It's also about supply chains, job creation, and industrial capacity. The ability to manufacture media at home, books, records, instruments, is part of a sovereign economy. Cultural production isn't a luxury. It's a public good. He says, when we let foreign conglomerates own the means of production and shape the terms of trade, we lose more than profit. We lose independence.
Right. And finally, Chris writes, here's what needs to change. Fixing this doesn't require new spending or slogans. It just requires common sense, like reform the harmonized tariff schedules so that inputs used in cultural manufacturing, like lacquer discs and nickel, they're treated with the same strategic importance as aerospace parts and critical minerals.
Right. He says create targeted exemptions for U.S.-based manufacturers whose supply chains don't benefit from current trade rules.
Yeah, what else needs to change? He says, ensure that small and mid-sized domestic producers aren't outcompeted by offshore firms simply because they can't game the system.
And the last thing that needs to change, he says, if we want a real manufacturing base, we can't let tariffs reward imports over production. It's time to get serious about aligning trade policy with domestic strength before we press the last record anywhere but here. Thank you, Chris Castle. Well, thank you,
well
Chris
done.
Castle. Absolutely. And as we wrap up the show, I do want to thank our sponsors. Of course, big thanks to Disc Makers, the MLC, Billboard Pro, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. We certainly appreciate it. And if you would just tell one friend if you like the show, Jay and I would appreciate that. And big thanks to the Licorice Quartet for that wonderful music underneath our sponsor info. So, on behalf of my good friend Jay Gilbert, I am Mike Etchart, and we say thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.